I came home from training camp to find my stepsister had taken over my room, and my parents were fine with it. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but real quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. I, 18M, just came back from a month-long basketball training camp to find something unbelievable. My stepsister Jessica, 16F, has completely taken over my bedroom, and my dad and stepmom are acting like it's no big deal. Some background. My dad married Karen 3 years ago, and Jessica moved in with us. Our house has 3 bedrooms, the master bedroom, my room, and a slightly smaller bedroom that Jessica got. My room is bigger and has better natural lighting since it faces east. I've lived in this room since I was 8 years old. I've spent years making it mine, posters on the walls, my gaming setup in the corner, and all my basketball memorabilia displayed on shelves. It's my space. I left for training camp excited about the opportunity. It was intense but amazing, and I was looking forward to coming home and relaxing in my room, playing some games, and decompressing before school starts again. Instead, I walked into complete chaos. When I opened the door to my room, I found Jessica's stuff everywhere. My posters were gone, replaced with her TikTok filming setup. My gaming PC had been unplugged and shoved in the corner, with some components disconnected. My basketball trophies and collectibles were carelessly piled in a box, and I later discovered that 2 signed basketballs were damaged. I was in shock. I immediately asked Jessica what was going on, and she just shrugged and said, "Your room has better lighting for my social media content." Mom and Dad said it was fine. I went to find my dad and stepmom, thinking there had to be some misunderstanding. But no, they confirmed they'd let Jessica move into my room while I was gone. Their reasoning: Jessica is really focused on building her social media presence right now, and the lighting in your room is better for her videos. You're barely home anyway between school, basketball, and hanging out with friends. I was furious. I pointed out that this was MY room, with MY stuff, and they had no right to just give it away without even talking to me. My dad tried to calm me down, saying, "It's just a room, James. Jessica needs the better lighting for her future. Your gaming doesn't need special lighting." I reminded them that I'm heading to college next year with a basketball scholarship, and I need a proper space to study and relax in my final year at home. Karen suggested I could just use Jessica's old room, like that solved everything. The problem is, Jessica's old room is significantly smaller, doesn't have the same setup for my gaming PC, and feels completely foreign to me. Plus, all my stuff was carelessly moved without any respect for my belongings. When I refused to accept this arrangement, my stepmom got upset, saying I was being unnecessarily difficult, and that family means compromise. My dad took me aside later and said I should make Jessica feel welcome, and that it's just a room. He made me feel like I was overreacting. I spent the night in my new room, and couldn't even sleep. My space has been invaded, my belongings disrespected, and my parents don't seem to care. Jessica keeps making snide comments about how I should be more mature about this, while she's posting TikToks from my room. Am I overreacting? Should I just accept this and move on? I feel completely disrespected and hurt that my dad would prioritize Jessica's social media career over the space I've had for a decade. I don't know what to do next. I've thought about just staying with friends until college starts next year, but that feels like letting them win. Any advice on how to handle this would be appreciated. Update: my dad thinks I'm being unwelcoming to my stepsister. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and things have only gotten worse. Thanks for all the supportive comments on my original post. Knowing I wasn't overreacting helped me stay sane through this mess. After my initial post, I decided to have a serious one-on-one conversation with my dad. I waited until Karen and Jessica were out of the house, then sat him down and calmly explained how hurt I was. I emphasized that this wasn't just about a physical space but about respect for my belongings and my position in the family. I pointed out that moving all my stuff without permission and damaging my basketball memorabilia showed a complete lack of respect. I thought I was getting through to him. He seemed to be listening and even acknowledged that they should have consulted me before making such a big change. For a moment, I felt hopeful. That hope was short-lived. The next day, my dad and Karen called a family meeting. I thought maybe they were going to fix this situation. Instead, they gave me a lecture about being unwelcoming to my new family. My dad said, "James, Karen, and Jessica have been part of our family for 3 years now. You've always kept them at arm's length. This attitude isn't helping anyone. We need to create an environment where everyone feels welcome and valued." I was stunned. I pointed out that I've always been civil with Karen and Jessica, even if we're not super close. I reminded him that Jessica and I have different interests and friend groups, so naturally, we don't hang out much. But I've never been rude or hostile. Karen then chimed in, Jessica feels like you've never accepted her as your sister. She was nervous about taking your room, but we encouraged her because we thought it might help you two bond if you made this sacrifice for her. I nearly lost it at that point. How is taking my personal space without permission supposed to make us bond? It's made me trust her less, not more. Jessica sat there with this smug expression the whole time, occasionally nodding along with whatever Karen said. She even had the audacity to say, I just want us to be closer as siblings. I thought maybe if you saw how important my content creation is to me, you'd understand me better. My dad looked disappointed in me, not her. He said I needed to grow up and realize that, sometimes in life, we have to make sacrifices for family. He suggested that my reaction was immature and that I should be setting a better example as the older sibling. The worst part? They're not changing anything. I'm stuck in Jessica's old room while she continues to film TikToks in my space. She's even started referring to it as her room, without any qualifier. I've tried to make the best of the smaller room, but it's difficult. My gaming setup doesn't fit properly, there's not enough space for all my things, and it still feels wrong. Every time I see Jessica waltz into my old room without a second thought, I feel a fresh wave of anger. I've started spending more time away from home, at friends' houses, at the gym, anywhere but here. My dad noticed and accused me of avoiding family time, as further proof that I'm not making an effort. It feels like a no-win situation. One small victory. I took my damaged signed basketballs and placed them prominently on the kitchen table with a note detailing their monetary and sentimental value. My dad did seem genuinely upset when he saw the damage, and he made Jessica apologize. Of course, her apology was half-hearted at best. Sorry about your balls. I didn't realize they were so important. I'm seriously considering talking to my basketball coach about staying with his family until college starts. He's been like a mentor to me, and I think he'd understand. But I hate feeling like I'm being driven from my own home. Any further advice would be appreciated. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here, with everyone acting like I'm the unreasonable one. Update: 2 months later, Stepsister's demands escalating, now her cousin has joined in. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I wish I could say things have improved. Unfortunately, they've only gotten worse, with Jessica becoming increasingly entitled and now her cousin Emily, 17F, joining in on the torment. After my last post, I decided to stay at home but establish firm boundaries. I put a lock on my new room, still can't call it mine without feeling angry, and made it clear that no one was to enter without permission. This actually worked for about 3 weeks. I focused on school, basketball, and my college applications, trying to make the best of the situation. Then Jessica's cousin Emily came to stay with us, for a while, because of some vague family issues at her house. Karen didn't even discuss it with my dad before agreeing to this arrangement. She just announced at dinner one night that Emily would be moving in temporarily. No timeline was provided. Emily is, if possible, even more entitled than Jessica. They're inseparable and constantly filming TikToks together. My old room has been transformed into a full-on content creation studio, with ring lights, backdrops, and all their makeup spread across what used to be my desk. The problems started almost immediately. With Emily staying in the guest room downstairs, Jessica started complaining that it was unfair that I had a room upstairs while Emily was isolated on the first floor. She suggested, with complete seriousness, that I should move to the living room couch so Emily could have my room, and they could both be upstairs together. I flat out refused. Even my dad thought this was going too far and backed me up, which led to Jessica and Emily giving me the silent treatment for days. I considered this an improvement until they switched tactics. They started, accidentally, being extremely loud outside my door at night when I was trying to sleep. They'd have conversations about how some people are so selfish, just loud enough for me to hear. Emily started questioning why I needed privacy so badly, and what I was hiding in there. The final straw came last week when I came home to find both Jessica and Emily in my room, going through my things. Somehow, they'd gotten past the lock. I later found out they convinced my stepmom to use the housemaster key. They claimed they were looking for a charger, but I caught them reading through an old journal I kept when my mom was sick. I completely lost it. I kicked them out, slammed the door, and called my dad at work, something I rarely do. He came home early, and we had a serious conversation. For once, he seemed to actually hear me. He agreed that entering my room and going through my personal things crossed a line. Karen tried to downplay it, saying the girls were just curious, and I was overreacting again. But my dad finally stood his ground and told them all that my room was off-limits, period. This small victory was short-lived. The next day, Jessica and Emily started a new narrative, that I was threatening, and they didn't feel safe around me because of how angry I got. They told Karen I screamed at them, I raised my voice but didn't scream, and that they were scared of my temper. Karen bought it completely and has been treating me like I'm some kind of violent threat ever since. She started making comments about anger management and asking if basketball is making me too aggressive. The silver lining in all this is that my college acceptance letters have started coming in. I've been accepted to my top 3 choices, all with partial or full basketball scholarships. I'm now counting down the days until I can leave this toxic environment. I've also been documenting everything, taking photos when my things are moved or tampered with, recording conversations when tensions rise, and keeping a detailed log of incidents. My friend Tyler suggested this might be helpful if things escalate further. I've reached out to my mom's sister, Aunt Rachel, who lives about an hour away. She was furious when I told her what's been happening and offered me a place to stay on weekends to give me a break from the tension at home. I've taken her up on this a few times, and those weekends have been my only real respite. School counselors haven't been much help. They seem reluctant to get involved in family matters unless there's clear evidence of abuse. One teacher I trust did suggest I try to sit down with everyone and a family therapist, but Karen shot that down immediately, saying, "We don't need strangers in our business." At this point, I'm focused on making it through the next few months until graduation. I'm spending as much time as possible at basketball practice, the gym, the library, or friends' houses. Home has become just a place to sleep, and even that is difficult with the constant drama. Any advice on handling the next few months would be appreciated. How do I maintain my sanity while living with people who seem determined to push me out? Final update. 6 months later, how I navigated the blended family politics and protected my boundaries. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I've finally reached a place where I can share how everything turned out. A lot has changed, some of it surprisingly positive. After my last post, things continued to be tense at home. Jessica and Emily's campaign to make me uncomfortable escalated to the point where they started spreading rumors at school that I was unstable and threatening them at home. This backfired spectacularly when several of my basketball teammates and friends stood up for me, pointing out that I've always been level-headed and respectful. The turning point came from an unexpected source, my dad's parents. I hadn't told my grandparents about the situation because I didn't want to put them in the middle, but they came to visit for a weekend about a month after my last update. They immediately noticed the tension and strange room arrangement. My grandmother, never one to hold back, directly asked why I was in the smaller bedroom when I'd had my room since childhood. Before anyone could spin a narrative, I calmly explained the entire situation, including the damaged memorabilia, the invasion of privacy, and the ongoing harassment from Jessica and Emily. My grandfather, who had always been close with my dad, took him aside for a long private conversation. I don't know exactly what was said, but afterward, my dad looked genuinely ashamed. My grandparents stayed at a hotel that night, telling my dad they needed time to think. The next day, everything changed. My dad called a family meeting, but this time, he started by apologizing to me. He admitted that he had allowed Karen and Jessica to disrespect my boundaries in an attempt to create family harmony, but that he now realized he'd achieved the opposite. He acknowledged that taking my room without permission was wrong and that he should have stood up for me from the beginning. Karen tried to interrupt several times, but my dad firmly asked her to listen. He then announced that we would be returning to the original room arrangements within 1 week. Jessica needed to pack her things and move back to her original room, and Emily would continue to use the guest room until her situation was resolved. Jessica had a complete meltdown, crying about how her content creation business would suffer and how I was ruining everything. Karen backed her up, saying it was cruel to disrupt Jessica now that she was established in the room. My dad, showing more backbone than I'd seen in years, stood firm. He pointed out that the room had been mine for a decade before they arbitrarily took it, and that Jessica's social media hobby, which had generated exactly zero income despite her claims of being a business, did not outweigh my right to my own space in my final year at home. The most surprising twist. Emily actually sided with me. She pulled me aside later and confessed that Jessica had been the one pushing her to help torment me. She apologized for going along with it and admitted that Jessica had massively exaggerated how I'd reacted when finding them in my room. The room transition wasn't smooth. Jessica dragged her feet, claiming she needed more time to move her setup. My dad set a firm deadline, and when she missed it, he and I moved her things back to her original room ourselves. Some of her backdrop materials were damaged in the process. Not intentionally, they were just awkwardly assembled, which led to another round of tears and accusations. But for the first time, my dad didn't cave. He reminded Jessica that she'd had plenty of time to move her things carefully and had chosen not to. He also pointed out that she hadn't shown any concern when my memorabilia was damaged during her unauthorized move into my room. Getting my room back was amazing, but the household remained tense. Karen was cold toward me, Jessica alternated between the silent treatment and passive-aggressive comments, and my dad seemed exhausted by the constant conflict. That's when I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. After talking it through with my basketball coach and Aunt Rachel, I applied for early admission to my top-choice college and was accepted. This meant leaving home in January instead of August. When I announced this at dinner, the reactions were mixed. My dad was initially hurt but ultimately supportive once I explained my reasons. Karen seemed relieved, probably hoping my departure would restore her version of family harmony. Jessica acted indifferent but later sent me a text saying, "Running away won't solve anything," which I ignored. The most significant development happened about 2 weeks before I left. My dad came to my room one evening and asked if we could talk. He confessed that he'd been so focused on making his new marriage work that he'd neglected my needs and feelings. He apologized sincerely, acknowledging that he'd allowed Karen and Jessica to dictate family dynamics in ways that were unfair to me. We had the most honest conversation we'd had in years. I told him how abandoned I'd felt, not just during the room incident but throughout his marriage to Karen. He listened without getting defensive, which was a first. By the end of the conversation, we were both in tears, and while it didn't fix everything, it felt like a genuine step toward healing our relationship. My departure for college in January was bittersweet. I was excited about this new chapter but sad about leaving things unresolved with my dad. He drove me to campus alone, his suggestion, and we had another good talk during the 4-hour drive. He promised to visit regularly and to continue working on our relationship. As for Karen and Jessica, our relationships remained strained but civil. Jessica eventually apologized for reading my journal, though she never acknowledged the room situation directly. Karen and I maintain a polite distance, exchanging pleasantries but not much more. Emily returned to her family after 3 months, and she occasionally sends me supportive messages on Instagram. College has been incredible. The freedom to create my own space without fear of invasion has been healing. My roommate is respectful of my boundaries, and my basketball teammates have become like brothers to me. I've even started seeing a therapist on campus to work through some of the anger and trust issues from the past few years. My dad visits monthly as promised, sometimes alone and sometimes with Karen and Jessica. These visits are still somewhat awkward, but there's progress. Dad and I also have our own time together, usually centered around basketball games or hiking, activities we both enjoy. Looking back, I can see how this painful experience forced me to develop stronger boundaries and more effective communication skills. I learned that sometimes standing your ground is necessary, even when it creates conflict. I also learned that real family supports each other's needs rather than sacrificing one member's well-being for another's preferences. Most importantly, I've realized that my self-worth isn't determined by how others treat me, but by how I respond to that treatment. Instead of letting the situation defeat me or turn me bitter, I used it as motivation to create a better future for myself. I'm not saying I'm completely over everything that happened. There are still moments when the memory of coming home to find my space invaded makes my blood boil. But those moments are becoming less frequent and less intense as I build my new life here. To everyone who offered advice and support throughout this ordeal, thank you. Your validation helped me stay sane when I was being gaslit by my own family. Your suggestions gave me practical tools to navigate a difficult situation. And your encouragement reminded me that I wasn't alone, even when I felt most isolated. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my dad, Karen, and Jessica, but I do know that I'll never again allow anyone to disrespect my boundaries the way they did. That, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson from this entire experience.